Okay, tell me, would you swim in a pool without chlorine? Would you swim in a pond with natural filtration? Today, we're gonna build a rec pond that is naturally filtered, and yes, you can swim in it. Our clients did say absolutely no fish. Well, she said no fish. We'll see. I'm Micah Miller. This is our channel, Easton Outdoors, and today we're going to build a naturally filtered rec pond. This is actually the first rec pond that we've built, and we can't screw it up. I've put a lot of thought into it, and I've put a design together that is replicable. So this is a design that I want to be able to package together and make a kit and be able to build a lot more of these. I've incorporated a hardscape wall, a tanning ledge, a lot of plumbing, external pumps, even jets in the 6-foot deep end. This is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Let's check it out and see if we can build this inside of 14 days. So there's 8 steps that I went through for the creation of this project. First thing that I did is I came up with an awesome design. I'm a little conceited there. I came up with the design, then I put together a plan to implement that design. Then we excavated, we laid out our liner, we installed our filtration, we started to build our rocks, we put the walls in place, and finally we created our skimmer system. So let's break down number 1, which is the design. So in creating this design, I spent a lot of time talking with my clients. How do you guys want to work inside of the pond? How do you want to live inside of the pond? How do you want to see the pond? Like, what's it going to look like from inside when you're sitting there on a cold day? What's it going to look like from outside while you're just drinking your coffee? What's it going to look like while you're in the pond? So I kind of think of a bunch of different areas that you're going to live in and how you're going to experience and what it's going to look like from all different angles of this pond. It's very, very important. Also incorporated in the design is being, quote unquote, budget friendly, is kind of figuring out ways that we can economize this, but also thinking through where the pumps are going to go, where a tanning ledge is going to go, how I'm going to incorporate the boulder walls, how I'm going to kind of put everything together to actually create this design. And again, remember what I said at the beginning of this video is I'm trying to create something that's replicable for us because I want to be able to build this exact rec pond for other people with minor changes, because at that point I can kit it out. I can know every single part that we put into this pond. And if you guys want access to that, I'm happy to share it. We're going to create a PDF that goes through every single part, piece, light, wall block, everything that went into this project. And we're going to put that PDF together and we're going to allow people to download it and use it as a guide to building a rec pond. So that's our first step, design. Now we move on to the plan. So in the plan, we're thinking about, okay, how many tons of rock are we going to need? How big is our liner going to be? How big of a machine do we need? What's access like to the site? Where's our soil going to go? And the soil, believe it or not, is actually a fairly large issue because when you're building something this deep, you generate a lot of soil. So we had the guy who delivers our gravel backhaul the soil out of here so it didn't become an issue on this property and create a bunch of drainage issues. Aside from the design, the plan is the second most important part because you need to know what materials to order and you need to have them coming because sometimes things take months to come, and if you're in the middle of the project and you don't have the parts you need, you've got a big hole in the ground with no liner the right size, no materials that fit, and it could stall the project and make it take a lot longer. Moving on to step number 3, which is the excavation. So as you can see, we've got a massive excavator here. We're using a laser and we picked a base grade off of the deck. So we used that as our base grade and we're checking our elevations. This was a little bit of a low spot, which is why we didn't pull our grade from the middle of the pond. We actually pulled it from an area where there's going to be a hardscape interacting with it, and that's going to be a static height. With our laser calibrated, our machine ready to go, we start by digging out the wetland filter. So we got all of that exactly where we wanted to be to our dimensions, made sure that our aqua blocks fit in there, our snorkel and our centipede. Then we moved on to the actual pond. So we carved out our tanning ledge, we made our hole for our retaining wall block because we needed to make sure that it had a footer underneath of it. After all that was kind of set, then we actually started digging out the lower portion and got that ready to go. Step number 4 is placing in the liner. So as we talked about in the planning phase, we're getting an extra large piece of liner for this because we've got our width, which if we've got a 25 or 30 foot wide pond, we're not going to buy a 25 or 35 foot wide liner. We actually had to get a piece of liner that can go down the full depth and account for some wrinkles and all kinds of different movement. So this is actually a 50 by 80 piece of liner for this pond. Massive liner. As you can see, it's very, very large. So made sure we had the EPDM liner in there, and you can see a lot of underlayment above and below it. That's just to protect the rocks from puncturing it, making sure that none of this rock that we're slinging around actually goes through it and then springs a little leak, because even the tiniest little leak can just be such a nuisance to find later. So we make sure to protect it with all this underlayment. Next step is the filtration. This is the heart of the entire rec pond. This is what's making it able to swim without any chlorine. And what that system looks like is it's got underlayment, liner, underlayment. Then we have what's called a centipede. And this is where the water flows into. And then on top of that, we have aqua blocks. These are our sedimentation chamber. This is what allows the water to disperse. Then we have 3 different sizes of cobble on top of that. So we've got stuff a little bit larger than a fist, maybe 4 to 6 inches. Then we have the 1 to 3 on top of that. And then we finish out with the 1-inch rounds, which you can actually plant plants directly inside of. You can take a taro, you can take an elephant ear, and you actually plant them directly in this wetland filter. And what happens is, as that water has to fight and go up through these rocks and get up all the way to the surface, and then it spills over our waterfall, it actually polishes the rock. It takes all the suspended debris that's in the water, and it actually adheres to the rock, and then the plants have a chance to use that debris that was once in the water as a way for them to eat and digest, and they use those nutrients for their root systems, and they grow and they get really cool. It's a really cool process how this wetland filter works. Filter being built, we've got our liner in place, the excavation's done, we worked on our plan and our design. It's time to set rocks. As you can see, we've already been setting rocks for a while. We're starting to build the waterfall, we're starting to build the walls of the pond, and the rocks are very important to rec pond, because I kind of see people swimming in this. I see them hanging out in it, and I don't want them to pull one of these rocks down on themselves. So you'll notice we're spending a lot of time making sure that these are shimmed properly, that they're sitting on soil, that they have a base that they're constructed against. So you'll see how we carve those shelves in our excavation. These rocks are sitting on the soil and they're supported by the soil. They're not supported by each other. And I want to repeat that. These rocks are not supported by each other. They're supported by the soil. I see a lot of people building these ponds with rocks, and they're just digging a hole at a 45 degree and then stacking rocks on top of each other. That is really, really dangerous. And I want to point that out in this video, very importantly, that these rocks are sitting on the soil. They're not supported by each other. I know I've said it a lot, but it is a really important thing, because then it can be very dangerous. At this point, we're starting to work on the skimmer. You can see the excavator over there with the aqua blocks. We're digging out where it's going to go. This is how we're keeping all the debris off of the pond. So this skimmer, which is called an intake bay, you can see we pull the liner back, we're pulling the underlayment over. This has the suction points at the bottom of it, but it's also a space where there can be a little bit of a vortex or a little bit of a swirling of the water. And what that does is allows the debris to kind of sit there without clogging the pumps or getting sucked up into the pumps. Really important part of keeping debris off of the surface of the water and keeping it from settling down below. So you can see those 2 hoods or heads of the boxes there. I don't know what you want to call them. Those are going to have suction points in the bottom of them going all the way back to the pump itself. Now, another important part to note, we used hard lines. So we used Schedule 40 3-inch lines from the suction points to the pumps, which are about 40 feet away. The reason we used a hard line instead of flexible PVC is if you start the pond up with a flexible PVC, when you've got the external pumps like that, it'll actually cavitate the line. And we don't want that to happen, obviously, because then it'll start drying out the pump and not getting the proper water. So really important to have that hard line going all the way back from the intake point to the actual pump itself. Step number 8 in our rec pond build, it's the wall system. We're building this retention wall just like we would build it in a terrestrial setting. What that means is we've got our normal foundation, we've got our normal pins locking it in place. This wall is good to go up vertically 6 feet, and we're using it exactly to do that. We've got our pins locking it in. We didn't use any tiebacks, it wasn't needed in this case, but we do have our normal foundation. We've got our underlayment running underneath the rock, and we used a triple layer underneath of the foundation, but the entire foundation is actually inside of the liner. So we dug a trench before we put the liner in, and then the liner kind of went down in that dip of a trench and came back out, and then we packed it full of 57s as a base for our wall, and then we started stacking the wall with our pin and groove and got it coming up, and then I topped it with a coping for a little bit more of like a pool-like finish. But part of the reason I used a wall here is you can see how fast we were able to build this wall compared to how long it took for us to use some rock and stack it and decorative. And you also notice one of the things of this design is that the wall is almost completely hidden from the porch, which is behind us in this view that we're looking at right now. But the porch is behind us, and I wanted to hide that wall as much as possible so that the rock work is really showing and shows a lot of its beauty. I didn't say this was a step, but it kind of is the 9th step, which is all the little details. There are so many tiny little things as we wrap up a project like this, from getting the liner tucked away and hidden just right to adding a couple little pieces of cobble here and there, making sure everything's washed down and flushed, and getting all the miscellaneous tools packed up and taken away. So much that goes into it. And that's pretty much a wrap. I would love to know what you guys think about this rec pond. As you can see, we put a lot of thought into it, and we're trying to make something that is aesthetically pleasing, is very functional, and just works for the yard. One thing I love about these rec ponds is they can be used year-round, whether it's to look at them and to enjoy their beauty, or it's to swim in them in the summer months, or even hopefully some fish in this pond. I don't know if there will be, but hopefully there will be some fish in this at one day. Let me know what you guys think below. Let me know how you like this project. Is this something that you guys would want to see in your yard? Is there other questions you have about the filtration and the process that we use to build this? Let us know. Please do hit the subscribe button. It means a lot to us. It shows us that you guys are supporting us, shows us your love, and allows us to make more content just like this.